everybody. Welcome to the first episode of season 2 of the Pull Up Trade podcast, the podcast wherein I, Samson Folk, am joined by my dear friend, my confidant, Trevon Heath. He pulls up. We talk basketball. It's a favorite around these parts. Trey, how the hell are you?
Reunited and it feels
so good. I was thinking like more of like the white boy version. That's the boys are back in town.
That sounds kind of lit.
Yeah, that's what I. Okay. Sunglasses off time. I have to go
All
back
right.
to glasses. Dude, I am a new glasses wearer.
It looks good.
I sat on them today. Dude, they bent like crazy. I had to bend them back. They're still, I don't know if people can tell, but they're a little bit off now. I'm new to glasses. I've only had them for like 2 months at this point, and I almost just completely destroyed them. And I bought them in New Zealand because they're
Ooh,
cheaper over there. Because
mm.
glasses cost so goddamn much in Canada. But regardless, we're not here to talk about my glasses, but we are to see, look, and observe the new ongoings in the Raptors sphere. Not a great joke. Okay. Trey, Raptors basketball. We haven't talked in a while, at least not for public consumption. Give me your sense after media day, your sense after the first preseason game. Catch me up on what Trey thinks of Raptors basketball lately.
Quick summer of media day. The most depressing of any team in the association. Like it felt as though, and you did a fantastic job of asking the questions that everyone wanted to know. It felt as though, and I guess Masai also laid it out, that they still don't know what they're doing. And the fact that they've had a lot of turnover, they, I guess, didn't pull the trigger. Whether you listen to Bobby or Masai, we had conflicting statements on those on Damian Lillard. It left everybody in a sense. You felt it from the media, felt it from the team, and from the fan base in general, that there's a lot of tension. And this season, because there's so many players who are unrestricted heading into next season, there is no more evaluation time. They literally do not have the time to do the same process they did further. So I'm hoping that is fleshed out ideally before the season ends.
Did preseason make you feel any better? Training camp. The Pascal is smiling reports that came out.
I'm sure he would smile harder if he had got an extension. But the game itself was very fun. You saw, although I would say they were less successful in the half court sets than you would like to see. You saw the motion, you saw the movement that they were attempting. I don't know how they're going to defy the fact that they can't shoot, but seeing Scottie in transition, making plays, and being empowered to get the ball a bit more was really cool. I don't know how successful Pascal playing off the ball a lot is going to lead to wins. And considering they don't have a pick, I don't see how it would make sense for him to not be optimized in the best way possible for him. But I'm hopeful.
Well, I really wanted to know because this team is kind of built, at least until the Pascal decision is made, and for now that looks like that's coming in the summer. This is the team you wanted for the most part. Like if you ask me, hey, you let Fred go or you bring him back for 40 million a year, I say let Fred go. They made the right decision. You were like, you can let Fred go or you can pay him like 30 million. You're still probably saying like, see ya, pal. Pack your I'll drive you to the airport in my nice car. And so anyway, they're making decisions. You like Jalen McDaniels. You are pretty aware of his game. You talk about, your second team is the Charlotte Hornets. They're making a lot of moves on the margins that you're saying, I like it.
Yes.
When they started playing Darko ball, let's call it, 0.5 basketball, the brainchild of what he's created, what was your first response? Were you like, this is what I've been waiting for?
The defense isn't moving. That was my general response. With a lot of like the yak high post action, there still just isn't the need for the defense to go over the top and chase. And that's still, although he made a lot of good interior passes, I feel as though when we play a better defense, and obviously in a more serious context, the defense is going to be okay with him shooting 5 or 6 floaters in a game and seeing how the results lay. I think similarly with Scottie, although he has like his passing is more of a weapon. I feel as though they're either A gonna have to start Gary, or B they're going to need to get shooting in ways that they from players that we haven't seen in their career right now. Because the minutes with Dennis and the starting lineup were tough. The defense wasn't moving. They weren't able to get really good paint looks. And you saw once they were able to like turn over the Kings, they got in transition and they were able to score a bit more. But the half court offense, I don't think has improved in a sense. But it is only one game.
Yeah. So their points per possession in the half court was 96 per 100 possessions. That was 1.5 higher than their regular season average last year. Scoring is typically higher in the preseason, especially in the half court as well. We've seen guys, Delano Banton is doing it again this preseason, but we saw Delano kind of dominate in last year's preseason. And that speaks to the level of play typically we can expect in the games before, even at the start of the regular season, the intensity and I guess teams aren't running to their full capacity, but I guess we'll see. It should be interesting as far as Schroeder versus Gary. I do wonder what that might look like, and especially when we look at trying to utilize Scottie as a hub. If
Yeah.
Scottie is like he doesn't the way they talk about this team, you would think that Jakob has the keys to be quite honest with you, because like anytime they ask about the offense, or I guess I'm part of media, we ask about the offense, he's like, well, Jakob Pertl is a pretty fantastic high post player. We're interested to get more out of that. A man wonders how they're going to utilize these guys going forward, because it did seem like they struggled in the half court to get
Yep.
Pascal the ball in good spots, to get Scottie the ball in good spots, and to get OG the ball in good spots. Schroeder, easy as pie to get him the ball and let him try to do something.
Yep.
Gary, piece of cake. OG hit his shots working off of other guys, but nothing really featured him. And Pascal and Scottie had a tough time navigating that space. Jakob, not really, because he never pressed for it. He was just like, hold the ball up high, pivot, try and find the handoff. If there's a backdoor cut, find it. But this was a team that did not create a lot of defensive responses. They played in transition on 27% of their possessions. Do you know what percentage? They were second in the league last year. They spent in transition last season.
I believe if it was around like 18%, if
It
I'm
was
not mistaken.
17. Look at
Woo!
you. That's
Okay.
pretty good. So every team comes into the preseason or
Yeah.
training camp or whatever, and they say, we're going to play faster. We're going to do X and Y. Do you think the Raptors can achieve more transition this season than last?
I would be surprised if their percentage is higher, just based on everything that Darko said. They're going to play a far less aggressive defense. So that's going to lead to less deflections, and they're going to get in transition far less. And I think losing Fred is obviously still a significant drop, regardless of his shooting defensively, just because he's able to get in passing lanes. He's great at navigating screens and blowing up a lot of those actions that led to those turnovers. I think that's probably the reasoning why they want Dennis in the starting lineup, because he's really good at applying ball pressure. But I find it hard for them to increase on a percentage that felt like unsustainable at times in the season.
So I'm going to go the other way.
Mm,
I think that they leaned too far into the aggressive defense. And while, yes, against the Kings, a lot of their transition was based solely on being able to get steals. But when we
yeah,
look back at like past Raptors teams, a big part of their transition, and they have had like, if you think 18.6, that is the high water mark for the franchise, I believe. But in their championship season with a very old team, 18.2%. Which was more than last year, right?
yeah,
Last year's at 17.6%. We're looking at a team that is going to rebound significantly better, probably will continue to run out after rebounds. The ball is going to find Scottie Barnes more often. He's going to pick up the pace. Like, regardless of, you're in the half court, who do you think is more likely to get you a bucket, Pascal or Scottie? It's Pascal,
yeah.
but a guy grabs a rebound, is sprinting up court now. Who's more likely to create a layup at the rim? It's probably Scottie. via pass or just taking it all the
Yeah.
way there. He's going to create a higher frequency of transition opportunities. And again, if the half court offense is a little bit more egalitarian, I think guys will take it upon themselves to, if you get the rebound, you push, because there's a bit of self determination in that. And so the influx of defensive rebounds, the more Scotty possessions, and the fact that, if you have it and you have a lane, you can assure, like, I'm getting a look on this possession. I actually think the frequency is going to go up.
That'd be good for their win total. Like Scotty is special in those situations. I think that's where you weaponize him the most, and that's when the game opened up against the Kings. I like the ideal situation is like last year we had some of the worst finishers in transition in the league. If we can parlay more transition possessions with actually scoring the ball, I think that you're in a situation where you're looking over on their win total this year, which I think if I were to pick, they're probably going to go over if I were to guess.
So let's just do that then. Everyone loves predictions. Their over under is what, 36 and a half, 37 ish.
Around, yeah,
What do you think they end up at?
I think they win 40 games.
Okay.
Just because they're still such a funky team. They're able to throw these really long lineups at you, and they're going to get in transition and score a lot of buckets. And some teams on some nights are just not going to want to run with them on a lot of nights, and that's going to lead to some wins and some surprising situations where they, like last year, they gave Denver a tough time just because of their length. They're tenacious in trying to get steals, and they're one of the few teams that really were able to stop them from getting Jokic the ball. Like situations like that where they are facing more post-oriented teams, they're going to have great success with. I think it'll lead to more wins than what people are predicting.
That's also the Kings, for what it's worth, and they had a
Yep.
lot of success in the first preseason game. I don't expect the game against Cairns to be like super super competitive. I guess we'll see. Um, Basketball in Australia is growing, but we'll see how that goes. Um, I am really looking forward to how they continue to try and initiate with Pascal and with Scottie, because this is kind of the idea we've been kicking around nonstop. Is these guys have very inherent advantages to create on the floor. Just today, I finished watching all of Scottie's post up possessions and tracking them and everything. So I'll have an article in a few days for people who are listening to this now. A really interesting fact is that I'm counting how often he passes out, how often he gets doubled, all this kind of stuff. And the really interesting aspect is he's really unbelievably good at hitting contested hook shots. And it sounds insane, but he shot 55% on contested hook shots out of post ups. That's just incredible offense. And that follows up a rookie season, and I didn't track this personally back then, but Sports Info Solutions did, through the start of his career to March of 2022. Scottie shot 57% on his contested hook shots. Basically, this guy has elite touch if you
Yep.
get him in proximity to the bucket, and he can turn over a shoulder. He's also an unbelievable passer, playing out above the break. There's a lot of opportunities to run low post offense around Scottie rather than the high post stuff that we're seeing with Jakob. It begs wondering, you know, how do the Raptors shift their offense towards their wings when all of the spoken ideals have been about shifting it towards their bigs? And I know it's tough to delineate those two things, but
Yeah.
do you have any like dream scenarios? Because again, this is what you wanted. You're like, give Scottie the ball. And of
Yeah.
course, once we're here, I'm in the same boat. It's like, we're here. He has to have
Yeah.
the ball. You have to figure it out. Let's see how it goes. What are your dream scenarios for what type of initiation he's doing?
I think if you were like to look at a situation, I would see it similarly to like a Bam Adebayo in a sense, where he's in a lot of dribble handoff actions. He's able to turn those into him switching onto a small, getting the ball there, weaponizing guys like Gary, guys like Grady coming off of him, throwing them lobs, putting him in situations where he's around some shooting, which I would like him to be to man a lot of those bench lineups. put him around shooting, allow him to face up against the other team's bigs, and allow him to have success like that. With the starting unit, it's tough to see a scenario where he can make the leap that we're expecting just because of how strict the amount of space that he's going to be given in the lineup, because there's right now only really one person in the lineup that can shoot that will force a defense not to go under. And I think that would be a mischaracterization of his skill set, and then also just asking for way too much from a player that young.
Okay, so I'm going to follow this thread since I think I know where you're going with this. When you have one of your best players, the guy who has the keys is a playmaker above a scorer, and
Yep.
Scottie definitely is. The context around them becomes significantly more important. I'm writing about Scottie's scoring, of course, but I'm also writing about his playmaking. And when you talk about playmakers, what type of lineups are you putting around them? You and I thought it would be fun to kind of consider what does a really unique lineup that wins minutes look like this season. And I asked you to put one together. I put one together. I'll give you mine. Actually, you go first. I don't want to see if we came up with the same thing.
The one I came up with was Gary Trent Jr., Pascal Siakam, Jalen McDaniels, um, Chris Boucher, and Jakob Pertl.
No
I
Scottie.
No Scotty. None. I think with that lineup, you obviously you're pushing on like a more Helio Pascal. You have guys that can hit open shots. You have guys who can dive to the rim really well, and you're giving him the opportunity to run a lot of those small pick and rolls with Gary, just like he did with Fred, and giving him opportunity to score the ball. And then you have Jakob in the dunker spot in ways where he is more comfortable. He can utilize his ability around the rim, and he's less of a liability as a spacer. So I think you would create a really funky lineup that's going to rebound the ball really well. You can get out in transition and cause a lot of turnovers also.
I love that you said funky because those lineups always remind me of the Funk Fest quartet lineups that really helped the Raptors dominate the second half of the 2021-22 season. The lineups that did a really great job of rebounding their own misses, rebounding all of the other team's misses, never allowing a team to get all the way to the rim, and just Pascal create
Yeah,
for the other guys. Gary fit into those quite well as the Funk Fest quartet is like their four wingy guys. Jakob doesn't really fit that, but Boucher, Pascal, and McDaniels obviously do. My lineup is leaning into the thread we were talking about. Gary Trent Jr., OG Anunoby, Otto Porter Jr., Scottie, and Boucher. You have the best cutter on the team in Boucher. You have a guy who will get out and beat everybody down the floor in Boucher. You have a guy who will help Scottie man the front court positions in Boucher. And that's what Boucher is out there for. Maybe he takes one of those corner threes, whatever, but he's mostly cutting and filling, and he's fantastic at it. I think everybody knows. The big thing here is that you have Gary Trent Jr., OG Anunoby, and Otto Porter Jr. And I think ideally in this situation, you can run Scottie through like those big, small pick and rolls, surely.
yeah,
But I would like to see Scottie with all of this spacing on the floor because you'll really play five out. Um, I'm running him through a ton of delay action, and I'm actually running a lot of those high post sets with Scottie instead of Jakob. And that's the kind of offense I'm like, it could really hit this season and could
yeah.
be really interesting. And so the point Scottie stuff, of course, is interesting. We're going to see lots of it this year. But the unique aspects of Scottie is that he succeeds in a multitude of ways and he has potential in a multitude of ways. Great playmakers often do, especially when they can score in isolation like he does. I would love to see that lineup. I suspect we do. And I think that's a lineup that wins minutes. I think the proxy is that there is a lineup like Gary Trent, OG, Thad instead of Otto, Scottie
Yeah.
Boucher, and that lineup won minutes by a lot last year. Small sample size, but as far as play style, that's kind of where I'm going with it. The second lineup I thought of because I wanted to anchor one around Scottie and I wanted to anchor one around Pascal. Similar thing, Pascal, Boucher, Precious are kind of giving you that like
Yeah,
tough front court stuff. I'm not talking about Jakob because I think Jakob's mostly going to win his minutes. It's not
yeah,
super interesting. And then we have Schroeder and Grady. And I
Mm,
think that there's a lot of different ways that you can manipulate, especially if you stack, and this is how I'm viewing it, stack Pascal, Grady, and Schroeder on the same side of the floor. And with Grady being so good at like the give and go stuff, if you can tilt the floor in his way, he can work that give and go stuff with either Pascal or Schroeder. And both Pascal and Schroeder are athletic enough to exploit 2-on-1 situations. And then having Boucher and Precious at the back end, they're tremendous cutters if you do collapse the defense. Maybe you get a smidge of shooting. Who
yeah,
knows, really? It depends on the team deciding what they're guarding. But mostly you're thinking about having Boucher and Precious defensively and also to put pressure on the offensive glass and to get out and run. We're preaching a lot of the same ideas here,
yep,
but this is what the Raptors are supposed to be able to do. This is, the bones of the Vision 6-9 is still here, obviously. Like sized guys doing unique things, running like hell, rebounding like hell, defending like hell, and filling in the offense where you can. Uh, if Scottie makes that leap, filling in the offense can be a lot easier. And if Pascal can maintain and fit whatever ideas they have for him, then he'll fill in offense where he can as well. I think this team has a lot of unique potential lineups, and a lot of them could include Koloko. A lot of them could include Jakob. But that's kind of the cool thing about having a deep team for what it looks like for the first
mhm,
time is that the machinations run quite deep.
yeah. I think what's really interesting about the team is like the inverse in the starters and the bench. We haven't had a bench lineup like this in years,
Yeah.
especially the amount of shooting that they have. You can go into a situation where 5 minutes into a game, you realize the starters don't have it today. The spacing that isn't really working, and then you slot one of those guys for Otto Porter. You're throwing in a Gary Trent Jr. Maybe Grady towards the end of the season is starting to rise, and you allow him to play with the starters 5 minutes into the game. You then like create certain situations where you have a lot more spacing. It gives Scottie the opportunity to play in a way that you would want him to, and even empower Pascal in a sense to because he's been operating in little to no space the last 2 years in similar situations where he's seeing a lot more one-on-one opportunities and able to score. It's kind of like the Knicks in the sense where their starting lineup
Hmm.
very tough. They had three non-shooters essentially, although like Julius Randle, some would say could shoot, but
He just comes out every second year and shoots like 38% from three
yeah,
on the most, and he'll pull up and
yeah,
he'll go nuts. It's just weird shot diet for that guy.
insane. But similar situation where they have three guys you're going under against, but you threw guys from their bench lineups, and they had one of the best benches in the league with shooting that helped them win a lot of games and a lot of minutes. And I think if the best scenario for the Raptors is something ideally like that.
It's kind of funny because you mentioned the Raptors being kind of similar stylistically to the Knicks. I guess that's why they stole all that info from them. One thing I want to talk about quickly, because we talked about, seems like teams will go under. The Raptors starting lineup, no matter which way you slice it, they're going to have to win with their bench during this regular season. Their bench is going to have to shoot the ball really well.
Yeah,
Um, Rookies are unknown. Otto Porter is unknown with his health. That's the difficult part. They're two best bench shooters. You can't really just like plug them in, yes. But
yeah,
if they do hit, both of them, you get 60 games from both, 60 plus, and they
yeah,
both go north of like 37, 38%. Those bench lineups, you might be able to cook something up with a decent amount of spacing quite often. But as far as like running high post, playing teams that will go under stuff, the Raptors play the Timberwolves, the Bulls, and the 76ers their first three games. Then they play the Trailblazers, and I suspect that high post stuff will do really well against the Trailblazers,
yeah,
who will be, I guess we'll see. But we're looking at a team, the Timberwolves, it's Gobert, Towns. I don't know if McDaniels, Jaden will be back by then, but like an Ant who is beefing up his defensive resume as time goes on. And I guess Mike Conley as well. Like they're a very good defensive team and they're
yeah,
massive. And they're also going to go under everything. You can play around the perimeter. The Bulls, they are going to do the same thing. And these are teams, and the 76ers the exact same thing. Like these are teams that are just going to say like, "We'll be here. You can mess around above the break. We'll see what you create. We'll see what you do." And it's going to be up to the Raptors to like really start to leverage spacing and advantages coming out of the corner probably.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see, but I really wonder how those first 3 games go and how the Raptors decide to attack because the advantages when they play the Bulls become very obvious. And they were very obvious in the play-in game, and they're very obvious every time they play the Bulls. They have small guards who
Yeah.
will guard. As good as Caruso is, he has nothing for Siakam. He has nothing for Scottie. Do you empty out the side and isolate? I wonder. We saw it happen in the preseason game with the starting lineup. The Timberwolves, the same thing. McDaniels is lengthy, but
Yep.
he's just not physical enough for either Siakam or Scottie. He'll bother them on the contest, but they will get to spots on the floor.
Yep.
Same thing with the 76ers. Who on the wing is going to stop these guys? Do you get these guys in space, or do you run through actions where Joel Embiid, Rudy Gobert, and Nikola Vucevic, who range from defensive player of the year candidates to just a quality big defender,
Yep.
sitting and just playing like crossing guard in like, hey, we'll see, bring it down here. That interests me a lot. What like that's a ringer to run high post offense with not so much shooting to begin the season.
It's it's tough. I think with the move like of bringing Darko in, you kind of have to see it through. You have to give it at least 10 to 15 games of trying to run this type of offense because if the person that you're bringing the franchise, like the keys to the franchise to, is saying that they hated the style of play that they played last year and felt that it was draining, I think they should give it a chance and see who is going to pop in this type of offense because it looked like guys like Gary were very empowered in the preseason game. OG, even in a sense, we saw a lot of stuff that are a bit more unbalanced than usual. I think what you might see is that some of those guys that are getting to a bit more action above the break pop in a sense more than we're expecting and lead to more production. Whereas like maybe Scottie and Pascal don't necessarily get to the spots that they're getting that they need to based on what we've seen in the first preseason game and don't produce as well, but the accumulation of the team is better due to more motion and passing the ball.
Well, that's I remember a game, I think it was December 28th of 2021 when they played the 76ers and Gary got a lot of the ball. I believe Fred was injured for that game. It was during that when the Raptors turned their season around basically like that. They didn't win against the 76ers that game, but they made that really good run through the back end of December, start of January.
Yeah.
And it was right after Chris Boucher said it was like the lowest point in my career when they lost to Cleveland by what, like 40 points or whatever.
Yeah, 50.
Anyway, right. Anyway, Gary Trent Jr. became a focal point, started running more pick and roll. They went to a lot of dribble handoff sets, typically with Siakam, but you could run it with like a multitude of guys, right? And the Raptors, they just dug their heels in defensively and said, we're going to grind for offense the only way we know how, which is at that point in time, like you're trying to get as much as you can out of Pascal, but you start leaning harder on Gary. We also saw OG go for 24, 26 points in the pressure cooker of a playoff game, working as the 76ers loaded up on Pascal and Scottie to some degree. OG found a way to score on like empty side stuff, get into space, make line drives to the hoop. I do wonder how it goes. And for the record, after it's the Trailblazers, it's the Bucks, and then it's the 76ers again. The Raptors have to play this way. I
Yeah.
mean, this is what they've been talking about. This is what they've been working on. This is what you're supposed to do. But it is kind of funny that they're running through huge teams
Yeah. The
that
best.
are like, hey, you got to shoot if you want to beat us. Um, like push will come to shove as far as the early efficacy, but I'm really interested to see how they churn for points because a lot of the initial actions probably won't work. A big thing about that too is that they turn to the secondary action or the third action, the tertiary. They had 30 assists. I made this point in my write up. Their first preseason game last year, where they walloped the Jazz by 32 points, they had 18. Do you get a sense that this team is already better at passing the ball? Or is this preseason, who knows, hullabaloo?
It,
You like
it
that word, hullabaloo? That's pretty good.
it's tough because they got in transition so much, and being in transition just lends to assists. I would like to see a game where it's more bogged down. They have to get through their second and third actions and see if they actually have the patience to weave through those actions and actually create buckets from it. The Kings game, like we've already said, they're a team that just fits well with us stylistically. We're able to turn them over a lot from what we've seen last year as well. It I think it's more of a microcosm of it being preseason and the team that we played than necessarily the the style of play. Because when you see the teams who are top in the league in assisted buckets, it's teams like Golden State, it's teams like Denver, guys who have a central hub who can shoot the ball, pass, and has spacing around them as well and create advantages. And those are things that the Raptors don't have currently. So I find it really hard for them to have those type of assist numbers in the regular season.
It's also really interesting that the Raptors are a team who it seems like they have their foot in two camps, you know?
Yeah,
They have, like, for example, you talked about the fact that the Raptors, it's easy to get assists in transition. You finish in transition. It's easy when Scottie Barnes is running the break and a bunch of wings are following him and it's preseason and you can just spray the ball to the basket. Like Chris Boucher runs, Thaddeus Young is beating guys up the court, right?
yeah,
But then it's like, okay, you need shooting to help open up the paint in transition. So you have a guy like Gary making reads where he's like, okay, do I go to the corner or do I try and make this layup? And Gary is famously not good at making transition layups, but he is good at hitting threes. And the Raptors are a team who they have so much defense to rely on. They have so much size, but then they go to a lot of unknowns in their bench.
yeah,
People think their bench should be good. I think it will be too. They have a unique opportunity to have a good bench for the first time, as you said, in a long time. But there are unknowns. And they play they project to play differently as they shift. And that's a cool thing. It's a unique thing. And it's something I'm looking forward to see if it'll pay off. I There's a lot we don't know yet though, but I'm like you. I think that they do beat the over under. I'm not like that low on the team.
yeah,
Um, I keep seeing people. I brought it up on the other podcast that the spread for predictions I've seen multiple people now say 50 plus wins. I've seen multiple people go north of 34, right? Like there are some people who just think it's not going to go well. There's more people who think it goes really well. And I think there's a lot of people in that 40 to 46 range.
yeah.
I just it's a very interesting team. I don't think they're boom or bust because they've kind of made their bed. The games just have to go good or bad at this point. But man, I do wonder how the first because they get put through the ringer immediately. They got to run the gamut, man. I'm excited for it.
No. It's tough. One question I have for you: the Raptors obviously played tons of isolation last year. They're bottom five in assisted buckets. Only one of those teams in the top five had success. That was the Knicks, the team where we might be cheating from, might be emulating. Around 39% is around middle tier, 15, 16 in the NBA. Is it realistic for the Raptors to go down from 42% in assisted buckets to around that mid 30 to high 30 range?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I do think it is. I think because they're gonna force it too.
yeah,
Like, yes, they are going to kowtow to the isolation prowess they have on the roster. They have to at some point. And also, Pascal Siakam, sometimes, given the defensive response, you're going to have to give him the ball so he can beat a mismatch, create a double, and create easy looks. Like, that just has to happen sometimes. And that's not just because it's a double and it creates an assisted look or whatever, doesn't mean it's not isolation. So, they have to find the right mix and they have to, I diagrammed this play in the piece I wrote. I talked about it on the last podcast episode, but running that gut Chicago action to get Pascal curling. And if it's, a not very, I don't know, a big man without a ton of defensive acumen, you're going to have lanes to the rim. You're going to have opportunities to make those strong side passes that Zion Williamson makes. And wow, he's like an underrated passer.
Yeah,
There's going to be a ton of opportunities for this team to try things. And I think they have the goodwill of the fan base for this season, and especially since they have a young star who's kind of spearheading it, to try things out, success or fail. That's like they have to have you've made your bed is what I mean to say, right? Like again,
yeah,
you have to be able to try this stuff out. You can't preach change and then abandon it if it's tough.
agreed.
If you believe in the core tenets, you got to believe in them. You got to see them through. You got to get better at them over time. It might not be great at first, but I at least trust it. Maybe not to get good, but to get better. And that's what you want to do. You just want to put the people who are going to be on this team long term in better and better positions and use what's happening, the feedback you're getting, the data you're getting, the film you're getting to inform the decisions you make going forward. And hopefully those are good ones,
I agree. I think by virtue of just having improved shooting from the team cumulatively with the bench, that percentage is obviously going to go down. Despite like the spacing they had, Pascal was still able to create some advantages within the offense last year, and a lot of those 3-point opportunities just weren't falling, just by virtue of the roster that they had. That changes from having maybe two or three games from Otto Porter to hopefully 60, and you have Grady, you have Gary that's coming off the bench. So I think by virtue of even if their isolation percentage is higher than we may expect, because although I want them to stick to the style that they want to, there is going to be a tug and pull between your core philosophy and winning games at the end of the day. And if they decide that going back to Pascal, isolating more is going to win more games, I could see it shifting. But overall, Pascal is a great passer. We obviously know Scottie's a fantastic one, and they should be able to plug and match certain lineups where they have way more play finishers than they did last year, which should lead to more assists.
The thing that I'm interested in mostly, as far as paying attention, somebody commented today. They said you may as well be a Pascal and Scottie biographer at this point. I've covered their games like possession by possession so intimately. I'm so familiar with their tendencies, how they attack certain plays, the stats that come out of them that I feel like I already know so much about how, especially doing so much with Scottie lately, expectations for how that's going to go. Pascal and Scottie makes quick decisions as a passer. Sometimes him having the ball in his hands longer can lead to better reads, but a lot of the times, like the less time it spends in Scottie's hands, the better. Pascal is a guy who it's not his passing vision, it's the live dribble and where he can get to that creates the passing avenues. And that's where you wonder, like, okay, he's one of the few front court players who can just amass advantages and assists with the live dribble facing the basket. He can get the double from the bottom. He can get the double from the top. He can get it from the middle. He can draw it wherever he wants, and he can find the open man. But he has to have a live dribble for it. That's where I'm like, if this is the point five offense, if they're making a ton of decisions, there's no doubt Pascal can fit in. That's
Yeah.
easy. That's what Pascal came up doing. But are you getting the most out of Pascal if you're not allowing him to dribble into advantage situations? That's where I'm like, I wonder how much they put on column A and how much they put on column B. It's the most interesting aspect of the team this season to me because Scottie's going to be good. It's going to be fine. People are going to be really happy about it. The Raptors are going to be better than a lot of people think, not as good as some people think. But Pascal is the guy who there's money on the line this season. There's where a huge part of what happens this season determines where he is next season.
Yeah.
And that it's a big deal to be an all NBA player when the future of where you're playing is hanging in the balance. And not because like, oh, is he gonna make it? But just there's a lot of intersecting ideas of what should be happening from a few different camps that will help determine where he plays for his next contract and how they make it easy for him to fit, and how they make it like, you know, this part of the offense is yours. You got to do what you do best. We didn't see any of that really.
Yep.
Like we saw 2 possessions of it in the preseason game, but it's interesting, man. I don't know.
It's a tough situation. I don't remember a time where the coach has told the best player on the team that he needs to fit within his offense. It's
Well,
usually inverse.
did we yeah. But that's not Pascal's style, A.
Yeah,
But also B, it's reportedly not Darko saying this, right?
that is also true.
This is like this comes from on high. This
Yeah,
is Masai says, "Hey, you know, this is my boy Darko right here. You're gonna play his way." You know, like it's not actually like that, but
yeah,
there. It's nice to have reports confirmed. That's our job, basically, as media, is to report things,
yep,
and then if you can get them confirmed on camera. Um, Grange reported that, hey, they're saying Pascal's got to prove it. And so I say, hey, does Pascal have to prove it? What's going on with that? Masai says, yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. I guess he's got to prove it. I don't know if I don't think that's Darko's style for what it's worth. But if the outcome is the outcome.
Yeah,
I think it's better that Masai says it than it is that Darko says it for what it's worth. Like one guy has a lot more cachet in the league and probably with Pascal than the other guy. But Darko's the one who's designing the offense, well, with the help of Jama, and the guy who's, you know, the head honcho on the bench.
yeah. It,
I guess we'll see.
yeah, it's like I feel like it's a tug and pull. Like every coach is going to want to win games, and it's the same with like LeBron James. Every year at media day says X player is getting the ball more and more. He is better than me. And then as you see slowly into the season, his usage rises, and I think the same thing will be with Pascal. Like Darko said, the goes to the best players. He's the best player on the team, and there's going to be times where they simply cannot get anything out of these actions, and they're going. And you saw in a couple possessions where end of possession, Pascal hears the ball, make magic with it, and he's the best player equipped to do so. And I think people would naturally gravitate to giving him the ball more because he puts people in great positions, and him scoring the ball takes the ease off of the rest of the team.
And to be fair, every star player, every star player could stand to cut a little more,
Yeah,
to make quicker decisions, and to play a little bit more within the flow. That ranges from a guy like AD, who's basically like, I'm all flow,
yeah,
all the way, and, you know, to Luca, for example, right? Who's like, Luca is like, I am the flow. I am the dam. I am the all encompassing existence of this offense. You answer to my whims and quiver before my power, you know, that kind of stuff. Pascal closer to AD, but he is also a player with strengths and weaknesses that we're going to see show up as they change. Hopefully a lot more strengths. At least that's where I'm sitting. You had a stat line prediction for him back in the summer. I want to get a stat line prediction from you now for both Pascal and Scottie. I'm going to be greedy.
Ooh. Scotty, I think I roughly said 17, 8, and 5, if I'm not mistaken. I'm gonna stick towards that. I think he's gonna have great success with the bench, but struggle a bit with the starters. And unless something changes that offers him more space with the starters, I don't see the scoring leap that may happen. If he gets to 5 or 6 assists, I think it would be a massive accomplishment for where he's at a player that isn't necessarily a primary creator. Being able to generate that much offense would be a massive accomplishment. For Pascal, I believe I said he was gonna have a career year. I just assumed that Masai would say, "Hey, here's the ball. we don't have Fred." I'm gonna bring that down. I think you see numbers closer to like
Did you say 28?
I think I said like 25 or 20, 26 or 27 at
I
least.
think you said 28, bro. I don't know.
I'm gonna say you're probably looking closer to 22 of like a very efficient like 22 7 and 4 where he's in the flow of the offense. He probably is our best scorer in the fourth quarter where the games get tight. They're probably going to lean on him more, but I think his efficiency will rise because he's going to be asked to isolate a lot less than he did last year.
I'm similar on both accounts.
Yeah,
I can't remember what I said. I think I said like 23, 7, and
yeah,
5
you
back
were less
then.
bullish. Yeah,
Let me go 22, 7, and 5.
yeah.
I still think there's like a lot of assists on the table. And yeah, for all you little true shooting sickos, I see you guys hunting down Pascal's stat page like, 56%. It's not so great. I think he goes north of 58% true shooting this season on 20, 22, 7, 4, 23, 7, 4. And then Scottie, or sorry, 5 assists, not 4 assists.
Yeah.
Scottie, I think we're looking at above 5.5 assists. Like that's my big thing.
Yeah.
I watched all his passes last year, right, to write that big piece. He's just too good at it. He just creates like something out of nothing as a passer so often. If he gets the ball in transition more often, like he always finds the pass. I also watched like so many of his passes, so many of his plays. A lot of guys like pay a little more attention when the ball hits you in the hands. Like he's diming guys up, it'll squeak through because they're like, "What the hell? You threw me a pass!" Like, shot ready, let's go, come on, help the guy out. 5.5 assists, and then yeah, I think like 17.5 points. Um, God, maybe like yeah, 7 boards. I feel fine about 7 boards.
Yeah.
Um, it wouldn't yeah, and then I don't know the peripheral stats. I couldn't say anything. And someone asked me today. ND talks ball on Twitter. I'm sure you're familiar with the account. Big shout out ND. He asked me what would be a win for Scottie's pick and roll possessions, for example, and I said if he's above the 50th percentile in points per possession or points per chance, depending on if you use whichever data collector you use. Uh, I think that would be very very impressive. They score immense amounts of points, like really efficient when he's the passer in the pick and roll. It was really bad when he was the scorer,
Yeah.
and and then it's kind of whatever when he's just resetting the offense, right? So when he has an opportunity to pass that thing, he makes good on it, and so do his teammates a decent amount of the time. I think both those things can go up a bit, even if the path to usage in the half court doesn't seem super apparent right away. A little bit of a ramble on that one.
What do you think are like the pairings then that lead to this assist jump? Because like with the starters, it's tough to see, and obviously like with your piece, he struggled like mightily with Jakob in pick and roll situation. Is it guys like Koloko? Maybe Precious evolves as a rim runner. What pairings do you think will be the ones that like really ignite him as a passer?
Well, I still think he can dime Jakob up a
Yeah,
lot. Like there's a ton of situations you can think back to. I've made this reference must be like 18 times on the podcast. Everybody who listens is annoyed of this, but the Kyle Lowry pass, right? Where the ball swings around, the defense is catching up, and as the defense catches up on the strong side, there's a duck in on the strong side a lot of the times for a big man. Everyone can probably picture in their mind like that Kyle fakes a pass above the break and then gives a bounce pass to Serge, who had ducked in for like this little tiny baby hook. You've seen it. It went to Siakam as well. It went to Amir. Like it's just a
yeah,
really clever pass. And as teams move and shake, Jakob is this massive presence in the middle, waiting there. And a guy who's really efficient on like these little push shots and like baby hooks and can get right all the way to the rim for dunks and layups, and Scottie will find him in the midst of all that madness for buckets. And Scottie, I published that quote from the team scout, of which I've collected quite a few about a few players in the Raptors, so people can look forward to that. But a guy was like, he doesn't miss the baseline cuts; he'll make that pass. The Raptors should have a lot more cutters this season. Ideally, if Scottie's the trigger man in any actions, he has my utmost confidence to be the guy who is like ping, 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 making those things. So, and then trusting in transition. That's a lot of this Raptors team, trusting in transition for what it's worth. But they've shown they can guarantee some sort of frequency.
Yeah.
Like they've just guaranteed the frequency. And they did a pretty good job of guaranteeing frequency and holding up an elite defense towards the back end of last year. I don't think Fred is an important part of that elite defense. I think that's something that carries over. I do think Fred was important to their half court offense, but you get more stops, you run out more, you stay out of the half court, and Dennis does a decent job. Um, you know, you can fill it in. You can make sense of it for sure.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
That makes sense. Like if Koloko also is really good or is serviceable as a backup, you highlighted it already. Him and Scottie were great together as a pick and roll pairing, and he offers like a different sense of athleticism and rim running where that Boucher kind of offers, but not with that same size and length.
Yeah.
It would be immense for my personal vision for a Scottie plus bench if he's able to man those minutes, run the floor, and then Scottie be surrounded by shooting. I think that's probably the best pathway if your idea is like how do I get Scottie to be a 25-5 guy. It's with that super athletic rim runner with shooting around him. And I think the Raptors have a chance of at least showing us what that would look like. So I'm interested to see that and just see if they can replicate the amount of turnovers because they're the number one team in basketball in turning their opponent over. If they can maintain that with a less aggressive style.
I think if you gave not on defense, but if you said Draymond, you no longer have a job on offense. That's Scottie Barnes. I think Scottie could give you like 26-5 this season with the Warriors. Just operating in an insane amount of space with
Yep.
his athleticism. This is part of the reason I like Kuminga so much. I know we differ on that, but just I think Scottie could go like 20 points, 6, 7 boards, and 5 assists on the Warriors if he took Draymond's role. How many possessions do we see Draymond look at the rim and go like, "Oh, I can't take it. I couldn't possibly." Scottie's like, "Give me that."
Yeah.
I would just love to see him work in that kind of space. But you know how many times a team has put together a team with Klay Thompson and Steph Curry? Once. So can the Raptors emulate that going forward? Probably not. You have to build differently. There's only ever been one Steph Curry, and there's only ever been one Klay Thompson. As stupid as that is, that those guys played together with Draymond Green and Kevin Durant. What the hell? Trey, any parting shots before we get out of here?
um, just super excited to be back. I'm super excited for the season. Although like things were murky from media day, I am still hopeful. I'm super excited with the way that they were playing in the preseason game, and ideally, we'll get some clarity. I've been agonizing about this for years, and Masai has to give me some clarity, so I'm excited.
I just, at the end of the day, too, it's basketball, right?
Yeah.
I'm never going to be too upset about watching basketball. And like, hey, I have certain beliefs. I want them to be correct. But I'm very, very happy to update my analysis and eat some crow if it means that the basketball is better. If the Raptors have figured out like new ways to dodge and skirt a lack of spacing,
Yeah.
not only is that a huge deal for the team, but like it's a unique accomplishment in NBA basketball. It's cool to play unique styles if you find a way to it. And if you play a unique style and it's bad, nobody says this is unique. They say it's terrible. It took what like 4 games for the Orlando Magic to go from, like this is a really interesting long team to everybody being like, no,
It was awful.
like forget about it. And, Paolo hasn't made a three in a fortnight, etc. Like, I'm excited for that team, but it has to be unique and good. And if the Raptors accomplish that, they will be in a similar position to 2021-22, where they're punching up at these teams, and it looks really, really interesting. That's where I'm at. My parting shots. Uh, I'm excited for the programming notes of this year. Away games, I'll be doing live podcasts. Trey can jump on any of those with me that he wants. We will be attempting a call-in show twice a month. For anybody who has ever been like, I want to call in and tell Samson he's an idiot. And like those are the calls I'm looking forward to, by the way. I want some real like shock jock radio going on over here. All that kind of stuff. But that's about it. that the reaction podcast is going live for away games. I can't do it for home games. Obviously, I'll be at the arena. And then the call-in show. Pull up Trey. I know there was a little while, a few months where it was every week. Trey's a working man. I'm a working man. We're going 2 times a month, unless you guys really slam that like button. The only thing that could get this podcast as a weekly podcast instead of a bi-weekly podcast, big sponsor, a whole bunch of viewers. If you guys want to change that, feel free. How's that sound? Is that a deal we can make with the viewers, Trey?
I smash that like button and I'll be
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in with us. We'll see you in a couple weeks or 1 week. We'll see how you do. Anyway, yeah, whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day and goodbye.
Ooh.